Teachers are extremely valuable in our society and literally create everything. There's so many ways that being a teacher prepared me to be a franchisee. Like I referenced earlier, like the continual idea of like you're always learning new things. But I tell every teacher I know that's like ready to leave teaching, you could just own a business because you have every skill that you could possibly need.
Absolutely.
Don't think you can only be a teacher. Like literally everything you do is connected.
Welcome to the Franchise Hot Seat Podcast, where we talk about all things franchising. Now, here's your host, Dr. John P. Hayes.
Hi, this is John Hayes with another episode of the Franchise Hot Seat. My guest today, Deean Ferrone. She's a franchisee who out in Denver, and we're going to talk to her about her particular business and why she selected it. Deean, welcome to my program.
Yeah,
Thanks
I'm happy to be here.
Helping my viewers, including my students who study franchising and people from across the world who use the Franchise Hot Seat podcast for information that might help them become franchisors or franchisees.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
tell us about your journey to franchising. You weren't always a franchisee. How'd that happen? What did you do before franchising?
Yeah, so I was a teacher by trade. I was a teacher for about 13 years. And within my educational career, I was a literacy coach, I was a data analyst, and I just kind of wore a lot of hats within the education world. But when COVID hit, I was teaching kindergarten. And having to teach kindergarten virtually can be quite an experience. And then transitioned into fourth grade, kind of in person and online, back and forth. And I turned to my husband and I was like, you know what, this maybe is a sign that we're ready for something new and I'm ready for a transition. And he was kind of feeling like he was ready for a transition as well. And we took our kids in for haircuts at a competitor about 20 minutes north of me. And we saw a big sign, franchise opportunities available on the wall. And my husband has always been into, businesses. He's always had like a little side hustle, things like that. And we called them. And they didn't call us back. And we emailed them. And they said, oh, so glad you had a great haircut in Utah. We're in Colorado. And we were telling this story. We're like, okay, maybe this isn't a great fit. Let's keep thinking, keep looking. And we told his story to our neighbor who also had small children. And he said, oh, well, have you heard of Pigtails Crewcuts? It's also a children's hair salon. I'm pretty sure it's a franchise. So we called them and they called us back in 15 minutes. They had all their ducks in a row and they just kind of were able to explain the whole process of becoming a franchisee. And during that process, we had been chatting with them for a few days and they said, oh, well, actually, there's an existing store very close to you that is looking to sell. Would you be interested in acquiring rather than building out from scratch? And we had not even thought that that was an option or on the table at all. We said, yeah, let's think about that. Let's talk to them. And so we went to dinner with the owner and her husband and ended up, 2 months later, we bought the business and we had a great experience. And we'd been owning and operating the Pigtails Crewcuts in Westminster, Colorado for about 3 months. And the franchisor called us again and said, actually, the Denver location and the Parker location, which is just south of Denver, they are needing to sell as well. And so we chatted with them. And then within the course of 6 months, we went from 0 to 3. So it was quite a journey. Yes.
Okay, so lots of things loaded in there that I want to talk to you about. First is the funny one. They didn't call me back. I can't tell you how many times prospective franchisees say that about franchisors who complain about how much money they have to pay for leads to find people like you. Could you imagine that competitor or the original hair salon you went to that you tried to get in touch with, and you did, but they thought you were in Utah. That really is a turnoff. But here you now own 3 units that they could have added to their portfolio of franchise outlets. But for whatever reason, many franchisors, and there are about 4,000 franchise concepts supposedly in America. Nobody really knows for sure. And maybe 3,000 of them are actively trying to sell franchises. Doesn't necessarily mean that they should, because there are some bad franchises. And I don't know that the one you went to is a bad franchise, but their franchise development was lacking. Why franchisors can't get that simplified? You get a call, you call back right away within 15 minutes. It's a chronic complaint in franchising that franchisors do a lousy job of following up with people who want to buy their franchises. So that's sad, but I also, at this point in my career, after many, many years and hearing it so often, say, yep, that's typical, but franchisors will complain about the cost of getting a new franchisee. So that's a problem. But then you talk to a neighbor, and the neighbor leads you to Pigtails or Crewcuts and
Pigtails and Crewcuts. Yeah.
Pigtails and Crewcuts, right? Mm-hmm. And that's not a brand that we know currently in West Palm Beach or parts of Florida or Dallas. But I also don't have little kids that I take to the hair salon, so maybe they're out there and I don't know about it. So that led you then to a great opportunity. But what about franchising? Did your husband know anything about it? Had you had any experience? Did you say, well, this is something very unusual? Who becomes a franchisee? There's a lot of negative about that. How did you get comfortable saying, okay, let's become franchisees?
Yeah, wonderful question. And there are some in Orlando, and there's several Pigtails and Crewcuts in North Florida, but none down in West Palm. So basically, we had gone on a date in Denver to Yogurtland, and there was a line around the block years and years and years ago. Yeah. And we were like, let's look up this business. Like, they have something going on that this many people want to get frozen yogurt. Yeah. And that, I think, was, oh my gosh, 2009. That was my introduction into what a franchise is in general. And it ended up not being a great fit. We were young. We didn't have, capital, all of that. But that is what opened the conversation for my husband and I to kind of delve into this world of, like, you can be a small business owner, but there's a recipe and a network of people that can support you. Having been in education, I feel like there's a very common theme in education that we're all there for the kids. We're all there to support each other. And so when my husband and I first started talking about this Pigtails and Crewcuts franchise and a small business ownership in general, I was really looking for something that could support me in this journey. Did not have that entrepreneurial bone in my body. I was not a risk taker, but it's something that I thought, okay, between your risk appetite and my managerial skill set and being able to connect with people, which is what being a teacher is all about, I feel like maybe we could go down this journey. So for me, the attractiveness of a franchise is you can own your own business. You can have that flexibility. You can have, set your own schedule, all of those things. And also you're not an island, right? You're in the middle of a network, a supportive network, which is why when we first started talking to Pigtails and Crewcuts, I was blown away with the process and how much support they were willing to provide. Mm-hmm.
Great. So all of that is true, and all of that I like to hear. Sometimes it's not the case because, again, there's so many franchisors. They're not all created equally. It's easy to buy one that's not going to be the right fit for you, and particularly when you don't know much about franchising. But you hit on it that franchising provides a recipe, or we commonly say a system. And if you follow the system from A to Z and you do it faithfully, you should become successful in your business. But I emphasize should, because a lot of franchisees don't. And for example, I don't want to make any assumptions, but you bought 3 existing units at different times. Is that right? You didn't build up. You didn't build out from.
We did not build out. We bought 1 and then we bought 2 in the same acquisition agreement.
Yeah. And they all were already existing, already operating, already had customers.
Yes, the Westminster location was the number one in the network. At the time, I believe there
Wow.
was around 75. So that was definitely part of our,
Yeah.
conversation with the owner. The other two were really struggling. They were much, lower performing, understaffed locations. So it was a very different journey in those, but it was also a very different journey than, building one out from scratch and having to
Yeah.
create in your community this concept of like, oh, there's hair salons just for kids.
Yes. Well, the very, very important point here that some people are not cut out to start from ground zero in business or in franchising. Even though a franchisor exists to support you, teach you, train you, hold your hand through the process, give you a system, show you what to do, when to do it, how to do it, etc. Some people aren't cut out for that because you'll go without money, for one thing, for maybe a year or 6 months, and people can't afford that. And the frustrations, permits, and dealing with customers and dealing with suppliers, these are all new to people. It's frustrating. And you don't expect the city to come along and say, oh, we're going to be closing the street in front of your store for 6 months for repairs. Okay. And what do we do about business? Well, that's just the way it is. That's not the franchisor's fault. It's not anybody's fault. This is just what happens. But new people are not necessarily prepared for that. So buying an existing franchise is the answer for so many people, except you come along and the business is thriving, and you had that experience because you bought the number one unit in the franchise network at the time. You're going to pay more money sooner than you would if you were going to start it from ground zero. Maybe you can get an investment starting out $200,000. Students of mine will look in the $100,000 range to start a service business. They have not bought retail and they have not bought food franchises, but they'll spend $100,000 to $150,000. But if you're going to buy an existing business, they've got equity built into that business, and they want to get their payout if they can. In other cases, the unit is struggling, and you found two of those as well. So let's talk about those experiences. Were you prepared to make a sizable investment to buy the number one store in the network?
We were. We did a lot of our own personal due diligence research. We hired a franchise attorney who was
Great.
extremely helpful. And we basically broke down, what was her her EBITDA, her operating net
Yeah.
income for the year, and then, 3 to 4 times that. And it was interesting purchasing during COVID or just past COVID, because it was also like, well, just don't look at this year. Look at previous years, because
Right.
this year was kind of a wash. So that was very interesting, because it didn't impact us. Like, it took us a few years after COVID, 2020, 2021, to kind of get back up. So we really should have considered that year. But hindsight's 2020.
Yeah.
The other two, it was much, unfortunately, the couple that owned it was getting a divorce. So they needed to sell very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of conversations about like, okay, how many staff do you have? How many are part-time? How many are full-time? We sat down, and took the regional manager out to lunch, and we said, do you plan on leaving? Like, obviously, like, we can't, make you stay if you
Yeah.
don't want to. But there was a lot of factors into that decision making and into the negotiation process, that went into how we acquired those three.
Yeah, that's terrific that you've had this experience, and I'm happy that you're sharing it with my listeners, because oftentimes, too often, people think the only way into franchising is to buy an opportunity to start from ground zero. And that is not necessarily, absolutely not necessarily, that's not the route for everyone to follow. You'd be much better off doing what you and your husband managed to do. And hiring a franchise attorney was really smart. Getting an accountant involved is really smart, because you got to get to franchisees are business people. There are things that you can pay for business-wise that maybe marginally aren't really business expenses, or what they're buying, you wouldn't necessarily be paying for out of your business. Or not that they shouldn't have done it. You run a business, you take every advantage you can of taxes and strategies to pay for things that you want and need out of your business and reduce your tax accountability as well. But that gets in the way whenever people come along and say, I want to buy your business, but I don't understand why you have 4 automobiles that you're paying for out of your business. Well, they have a good reason. They got spouses and kids and good reasons to have those automobiles. But, that should be considered in the process of buying the business. So getting professional help, you did that well too, which I'm happy to share that. Now, why did it bother you at all that these 2 existing units, couple getting a divorce, okay, they had to sell. I understand that process. I was the CEO and I was also a franchisee of We Buy Ugly Houses, which was very big in Denver when I was the CEO of the company as well. And it gives me the idea We Buy Ugly Franchises. Divorce is people think when we say we buy ugly houses, your house is ugly. Well, yeah, okay, run down, roof is leaking, you don't have the money to repair it. That's an ugly situation. Divorce is an ugly situation. One of my best deals came from sitting at a bar. Gentleman sits down next to me, asks what I do, tells me that he's getting a divorce, tells me all the details about the divorce, needs to sell his house in Las Vegas really fast. That was one of the easiest deals we made. Unfortunately, ugly situation. Those things happen, even in franchising. Couple getting a divorce, they need to sell fast. That's an opportunity for you. So were you bothered by why were they not making it, or could you figure out why they weren't making it?
Yeah, fantastic question. I think we got very lucky. I mean, we did our work, but we got very lucky too that we bought the very successful one first. And the team that was there stayed. And there were a lot of systems and structures in place already. And then I brought in my own and kind of tweaked things. But we saw how the formula or the recipe or the system could work. We saw how, if you staff appropriately, if your salon is clean, if you market appropriately, it can be very successful. There were a lot of things that Westminster did and had in place that the other 2 did not. They did not have the appropriate staffing. The retail was a mess. The floor needed to be replaced. There was no marketing. Like you could type in kids haircuts Denver and it wouldn't come up. There were so many things that the other 2 salons weren't doing that Westminster was. So we did a tour of the salon. We talked to the employees. We brought our kids in for haircuts, saw what kind of haircuts they could get. Things along that nature that allowed us to really see the differences and maybe the why of these 2 particular locations not being successful. And one of them, there was one person working there. That's it. And I'm like, you can't run a salon with one stylist. Like she gets sick and the salon is closed. So it was like, okay, we need to hire, and we need to train. So I think we kind of saw the writing on the wall with Westminster being so successful. And we're like, we can replicate this. There are things that have been done wrong. They've been neglected. There were some people that we needed to, transition into something else. So that I think that really was our ticket. We, it's a roller coaster, obviously, and things that work at one location don't always work at the other. And the communities are all very different as well. But I think having that model was really helpful.
So in less than 6 months, you went from not being a franchisee, having never been in franchising, to owning 3 units of a children's hair salon. Did the franchisor help you in understanding why these businesses weren't operating as well and why it made sense for you to buy them and take over?
Yes and no. We did have a lot of conversations. Pigtails and Crewcuts has a franchise support specialist that they assign to every new franchisee, and
Smart.
that's your go-to person, right?
Hmm.
So my guy was named Ben, and he had been with the network forever, and he's still there, and he's wonderful. And
Good.
he and I had a lot of great conversations. I called him, I texted him, everything about what are the things that Westminster is doing that are making it be successful,
Mm.
and how can I put those things in place at the other two. It's also, my teaching background is like if you don't know something, you learn it. You learn what it takes. So like I started devouring every single business podcast. I've listened to several of yours, business books, talking to other owners. The network itself has, a Facebook group for owners. There were so many avenues that I could go down to kind of get the support that I needed.
Mm.
And the franchisor would always answer my calls. They'd always answer my emails. Everyone at the corporate office is they really feel like a small group, and they're cheering for you because obviously, we're paying a percentage of our income,
Right.
to them. So
Yeah.
they need us to be successful.
Yeah.
But also, they're genuinely kind human beings that want you, to fulfill your dream of owning a small business. So I think that combination of, having my own really strong work ethic, and just being able to just learn as much as possible, and the franchisor support, but also them pointing you in the direction of like, okay, talk to this owner. They're really good at retail. Talk to this owner. They're really, really good at hiring. And everyone in the network, like it's a children's business, right? Like it's very warm and cuddly. It attracts people that are helpers. It attracts people that are willing to like share their knowledge with you. And it ends up being, the type of situation where you feel supported. And I think that was our kind of ticket to turning those two salons around. Like Parker went from 250,000 to over 600,000 within a year because of all of these things that we were
Wow.
able to do.
Yeah. So that's one of the great things about franchising is that if you have a good franchisor and they have good franchisees and they're all well connected, when you're having an issue, they can say, oh, we got two franchisees who had that problem a year ago. They've solved that problem. Give them a call or go visit them. That's a luxury in business because if you're out there on your own as an entrepreneur, you're testing, and spending your money and not getting a return. Well, that's generally what a franchisor does, which is what people don't understand. Many franchisors invest millions of dollars in the operation of their business before they ever have a franchisee. Many of these people, like McDonald's, the brothers didn't know they were ever going to franchise. They just wanted to have a location that sold their great hamburgers and fries and milkshakes. And then look what happened. But lots of money gets invested that franchisees don't see. And then being able to take advantage of what the franchisor has done, all that groundwork. And it sounds like you have a terrific franchisor. I don't know your franchise company, but from what you're saying, that's what you expect. That's what franchisees expect from franchisors to get that kind of assistance. Now, let's also talk about you're a teacher or you were a teacher. It takes a special heart. I've been a teacher. I've been in the corporate side, left the corporate world to go back to teaching where I said, I can't do that until I can afford a teacher's salary. It's really sinful, even at the university level, what teachers get paid, considering how important of a role teachers play in the life of a child all the way through college. So you got to be prepared for that. You're not going to make any money, but you get great satisfaction in teaching, even to this day at the college level, because I teach franchising. Not many universities, although University of Denver has a franchise center, and they do offer, I don't think it's part of their academic curriculum, it is at Palm Beach Atlantic University. You graduate with a concentration in franchising or with a degree in entrepreneurship in franchising. And I get feedback from students, which is worth more than the money, but at my age, that's okay and something that I really value. When a young person says, I came here to study data analytics, but I got bored with that and I heard about franchising and now I'm on fire. I'm going to be a multi-unit franchise owner. Okay, great. And when they graduate and they send you a note that says, thank you for changing the direction of my career and my life, wow, that feels great. That's part of the payoff for teachers. Not all teachers get that. At some point, though, you must have decided, I've arrived at the end of the teaching journey. I want to do something else. And maybe you knew, or maybe you didn't know, that teaching prepares you for franchising. Just like if you're in the armed services, veterans make the best franchisees, but teachers are right up there almost with them. Now, for veterans, franchisors have a program called VetFran, and they give veterans a discount to buy into a franchise. We need something for teachers because they don't give discounts to teachers. They ought to. So how did teaching prepare you to become a terrific multi-unit franchisee so quickly?
I couldn't agree more. Teachers are extremely valuable in our society and literally create everything.
Yeah.
There's so many ways that being a teacher prepared me to be a franchisee. Like I referenced earlier, like the continual idea of like you're always learning new things. But I tell every teacher I know that's like ready to leave teaching, you could just own a business because you have every skill that you could possibly need.
Absolutely.
Don't think you can only be a teacher. Like literally everything you do is connected. So the planning and the organization, right? Teachers have to do lesson plans. They have to make sure that, you know, the next year they need to hit this goal by the end of the year and they can backwards plan to reach that goal. It's the same thing with being a franchisee. You're like, okay, I want to hit $500,000. Here's how much I need to spend on marketing. Here's how much I need to, you know, my labor percentage needs to be. All of these different things. But honestly, the connection to the community. So having a class of 26 children, they all need 26 different things, right? They're all at a different place in their learning journey. It's the same way with your teams of your employees, right? Stylists are wonderful human beings, but they didn't get into becoming a stylist because they love to just sit and read all day. They're moving, they're wanting to use their hands, they're very creative. So they need to be, you know, managed or led in a very different way than you would maybe a corporate accountant, you know, a group of corporate accountants. So it really is. Teachers are prepared to meet people where they are in their journey because that's your whole educational experience has been training to make sure that you can connect to people and give them what they need. The other aspect is also the communication with your clients is very similar to the communication that I would have with parents, right? You're unhappy with where your child is in my class. Here's the things that we can do. Oh, you're unhappy with this experience. Here's the things that we can do. So you're connecting more with your clients the same way you would with a parent. And also my business in particular is the kid business. So there's also that connection of, you know, knowing what a child needs to feel safe is something that's very important to us in the salon. We'll cut their hair at the train table. We'll cut their hair sitting on the floor. Just so many different times that we have found that we just need to meet kids wherever it is that they are. And a lot of these kids, they've been turned away at your Supercuts and your Great Clips and things like that because they can't sit without having, you know, these other toys or like stimuli. We have Disney movies going. They get to sit in a little car. There's different things that are in place. But ultimately, being able to jump from one thing to the next is the life of a teacher. Like, I'm taking my kids to music. Oh, I need to sit down and have this parent-teacher conference. Oh, I need to lesson plan for tomorrow. Oh, and I better look at my data because I need to make sure that, you know, Johnny is where he needs to be in terms of his English language development. But being a franchisee is the same way. I'm jumping from, oh, I need to fix the seatbelt on this little car. But then I also need to make sure that my marketing plan is turned in. Oh, I also need to make sure that I'm reaching out to this school because I'm going to do a donation basket for them. There's so many things that you're just jumping around. No day is the same, and that's also the life of a teacher. Yeah. So the skill set is so connected.
Absolutely. And then as a teacher, I don't know if you experienced this, but when you went to training school at your franchisor, do you evaluate the trainers, the teachers, and you know, some aren't as good as not everybody can teach. It sounds like that's a pretty easy thing to do, so let's don't pay them very much. But we know that you got to meet the needs of, you got 26 kids in the room, You got 26 different needs that you're trying to meet. And that's true at a franchisor level too. You got 26 franchisees in the room. They all have different learning abilities and disabilities. They all have different personalities. If you're the D personality, you're not paying any attention to what the teacher is saying. You just want to get through the training and go open your unit and make money. And if you're the C personality and the DISC, you're listening to every word and taking notes and asking detailed questions. And a teacher has to be prepared to do all that. But at the corporate level in franchising, and I go to a lot of programs where they're doing discovery days or they're doing training sessions, or I'm there to evaluate in some cases, or perhaps to do some training. And franchise conferences that I go to where someone's leading. Do you evaluate the training, and how does it fare?
Yeah, we actually are not our last conference, but the one previous. Everyone took the disc,
Yeah,
and
good.
it was really interesting.
Yeah.
I was a DI, as are a lot of the most successful franchisees in our
Yes.
network.
Very popular in franchising,
Very
the DI
popular,
personality.
yes. And my manager, who I took with me, was a CS, so that's why we worked so well together.
Yeah,
Because I would lead the charge, and she'd be like, "But we need this detail and this detail and this
Yeah.
detail." I'm like, "Okay," but our particular franchisor at Pigtails and Crewcuts is really, really flexible in how they're presenting information. They send out a survey beforehand. What would you like to see? They send out a survey after. How did it go? We are evaluating each part of the conference. And sometimes conferences, it's like a keynote speaker that kind of like was life-changing, and then another keynote speaker that is kind of like, I could have got up there and done that,
Yeah.
So giving that feedback is also really important, even though it's highly unlikely we'd have the same keynote speaker conference after conference. But in terms of the discovery day and the training day, they did offer feedback. It was a little less formal than the feedback we give on the conference. It wasn't like a written survey, but we went out to lunch, and I very openly was like, "Would you like some feedback?" And they said, "Of course." I was
for
like,
you.
"Well, as a teacher, you can't just have people sitting and listening all day. Like after a certain amount of time of sitting and listening, your brain turns off. You can only take in so much. So if you're teaching someone how to create marketing tools in Canva, open up Canva and have them actually create a sample marketing, flyer or something." And they're actually doing that now, which is wonderful. So I feel like the people that are at our particular franchisor office, they're very open to wanting to get better. They want the franchisees to have a great experience. They're spending a lot of time, energy, and money to present a conference or present a week of training, and they want it to be as effective as possible. So they have been very open to feedback, which I have appreciated.
Yeah. I'm happy to hear that they're using the DISC. It's something that I specialize in. All of my students take a DISC at the beginning in the first week or so of classes with me. Because if I don't know them particularly, then I don't know how to teach them. I don't know what their personality is. Few teachers, I think, do that. Few franchisors do this. It's a shame. They should give you a disc before you ever become their franchisee. And more prospective franchisees need to say to the franchisor, "I want to see the disc personality profile of your top 20 franchisees. Because if I don't have that personality, well, let me see the bottom 20 franchisees. Because if I have that personality, that's probably where I'm going to end up." Franchisors would save themselves so much stress and lawsuits and unhappiness. And franchisees would be so much better off if they knew, I have the profile, that DI profile that you have. There are lots of things you can do as a franchisee. The CS or the SC profile, not as many things you can do as a franchisee, but people aren't aware of that. And franchisors, shame on them, for they're going to take your money. They should know, oh, this DI personality is where our top 20 franchisees are. We need more like that. But that doesn't happen. Are they going to continue to use DISC now?
That's a great question. I'm not sure. We did it at the conference, and we had someone come in and present, so we learned what it was to be a D or an I or that
Yeah.
combination. There wasn't a lot of follow up after that. It was more like, okay, you have this information about yourself. I plan on using it in my own business with my own
Yeah.
employees. I've had some managers kind of shift around. I'm like, well, let's see, if there's certain things that are going to be a better
Yeah.
fit.
Yeah, and at least it's a good idea for you to find out, well, what is the profile of a top manager? Every franchisee should want to know that, because before you bother interviewing and hiring someone and going through all the interview process and everything involved in a job, why are you going to waste all that time on the wrong personality? They're going to be a misfit in your business. They're not going to help you grow the business, and you're going to ultimately have to get rid of them, which causes you a lot of strife and money. So why would people do that? I just don't make decisions about people without knowing what the profile is. It's such a simple thing, and it's not very costly. When a franchisor says to me, "Oh, yeah, that's too much money to do," what you're talking about taking $300,000 from a franchisee, and you can't afford a few $100s to make sure it's the right profile. It just doesn't make sense to me. But that's a whole nother rant. I want to get on another topic with you. You don't cut hair, do you? You're not a stylist, but you run 3 hairstyling salons for children. How can that be?
It's the question I get all the time.
Yeah.
People say, "What do you do?" I'm like, "Oh, I run a chain of children's hair salons." And there's, "Oh, do you cut hair?" No, no, I do not. It's kind of, I'm very passionate about what we provide, and it is more than just cutting hair. It's an experience. The kids come in, they get everything that they need. But for me, it could have been a coffee shop. It could have been, another franchise that probably something to do with kids, because that is
Yeah.
where my heart
Tutoring
is.
businesses,
Yeah,
child care, lots
yes,
of children's industry is huge in franchising.
yeah, it's absolutely huge. Like right
Yeah.
next to us is a little play gym. Like there's so many opportunities to be in that, in that world. But for me, it is running a business is running a business. You're paying attention to everything. So I do try to get into the salons as much as I can, but the majority of my work is here in my home office. So like I'm, doing all of our social media, I'm doing all of our marketing. I am analyzing, okay, how did we do this quarter versus this quarter last year? All of that kind of running the business things, paying bills. Our hot water heater exploded at one of the salons, so booking plumbers to come in and
Right.
fix the hot water heater. Oh, and all the ceiling tiles got destroyed. So now I need to book a handyman to come in, and some of it I do myself, but not hot water heaters.
Yeah.
So I like to tell people, like, anything that you're interested in, there is probably a franchise for it. And if you're scared to own your own small business, like, this is a way that you can kind of baby step into it. It is expensive, but it's a lot more expensive to go and make your own mistakes rather than learn from people that have already made the mistakes.
Yeah. So that word expensive, I want to key on that for a minute as well. People say it's, accountants will say. I love to speak to accountants because they usually are anti-franchising, and they tend to advise their clients to start their own business entrepreneurially. And I have to remind them, or maybe teach them, that the United States government Small Business Administration says that 50% of entrepreneurial startups are going to fail within 12 months. Why you want to do that to your client? You're going to lose your client. And even if you survive a year in an entrepreneurial business, in a startup, the statistics show that as high as 85%, those businesses will be shuttered within 5 years. Why do you want to do that? So franchising doesn't always have a better story to tell, but generally does, or the franchise wouldn't be around for years and years and years. Franchisees usually succeed, but people will say, but why do I have to pay that upfront franchise fee? And gee, I've got to pay a 8% royalty, 8% of every dollar forever. As long as I'm a franchisee, goes to the franchisor. It's too expensive. Well, how do you make sense of that? I don't know what your royalty is. If you want to say it's okay, and you feel okay giving that to the franchisor every month.
Yeah, I think for me it was worth it because like you said, there's a lot of examples of people starting their own business and it failing because in my opinion it's too many things to do yourself. I don't know how to create a website. I don't know how to do, to put in a new floor. I don't know how to do everything that it takes to run your own business. And my husband has stepped away. We started it together, but he went back to his career. So I run everything. And if I didn't have so many people in my court, so to speak, at the franchise office, I
Right.
wouldn't know what to do. Like I was posting on our Instagram like live in the moment, and then the franchisor was like, "Oh, well, you can like calendar that." Like there's websites where you just create your post, and
Right.
this has been years ago, but
Right.
it's just things like that it's just like it's impossible to know everything.
Right.
So like why not elicit the help? And you don't get help for free. It just
Right.
isn't how the world works. But knowing the success, Pigtails just celebrated their 20-year anniversary. There's 85 locations nationwide. So it's been proven that you can do these things and it will be a successful business.
Yeah.
And that is much more valuable to me. Our fee is 5%, which is very reasonable, I
Yeah.
think, for the contributions. During the training day, they showed a graphic to me that really resonated with me that I had also seen in the teaching world. And in the teaching world, the graphic is a little line that goes up and down, and it's how you feel over the course of this school
Right.
year, right? Like in August, everyone's all pumped. By
Right.
October, you're like, oh God,
Oh,
Christmas
when will
is
this
so
be
far
over?
away. And then the graphic they showed was the relationship between the franchisor and the franchisee. And at the beginning, everyone is happy and
Right.
excited, and you're going to go down this small business journey. And then you're like, wait a minute, they're not doing everything for me. So like now I feel really terrible about it. And then you move up a little bit more, and you're like, oh well, actually, this is okay. Like they're giving me enough, and I'm doing enough. And so it's a roller coaster, right? You're going to ebb and flow with your
Yeah.
relationship with your
Yeah.
franchisor, but they provide enough for me that I feel like it's worth a fee. Do I wish it was 1%? Of course.
Yeah.
Of
That'd be
course I
better.
wish it was less.
Yeah.
But for me it's like you're getting your money's worth.
Yeah. And franchisors really do not make money until they have about 100 units plus. So your franchisor still has some struggle going on financially. And 2/3 of franchise companies in America never make it to 100 units. So you're in a good franchise network. That's good for you. And I can tell you why your husband went back to his career, because you're a D personality and you're a powerhouse. And why get in the way of a good thing?
That's exactly what he said.
Yeah, I know. I know D personalities. But that I personality is really what works for you and works for other people. When they say, okay, I run hair salons for children, but I don't know the first thing about cutting hair, and I don't want to know anything about cutting hair. It's the same as the plumber. I'm not a plumber. I don't know anything about plumbing. I just want the toilet to work, and so do my customers. I'm a salesperson. I make things happen. I'm a teacher. I network in the community. I'm bringing customers to my business, but I'm not going to provide the service. This is one of the great benefits of franchising that, again, people misunderstand. They think, well, I would never buy Pigtails and Crewcuts because I don't cut hair. Well, they don't want you to cut hair because you can hire stylists. Might not be easy to hire stylists. And what about that? Can you find the employees you need easily enough?
No.
Yeah,
No.
problem.
There are, yeah, post COVID, all like everything in the world, a lot of stuff shut down, including beauty schools. There
Yeah,
were not a lot of new young, men and women that were coming out of beauty school wanting to cut hair. The schools were closed. So for the first 2 years, it was extremely hard to find stylists because even if there were cosmetologists that were licensed and wanted to cut hair, out of every probably 100 hairstylists, maybe one wants to do kids, right? They move, they cry, they kick you. They're wiggling all the time. Like it's very hard to
Yeah.
cut kids' hair. So for me, when I'm looking at hiring employees, we can teach you how to cut hair. I have enough seasoned stylists. I have enough great managers that love training new, usually women right out of school. But I can't teach them to like children. I can't teach them to be friendly, to be outgoing, to have conversations with the parents, because it's even more difficult to do kids' hair because you're not just talking to the person in your chair because they're 4. You're having a conversation with the parent. And so there's 2 different things going on. You have to be kind of entertaining the child, but you also have to be connecting to the parent. And that's very difficult. But for me, I like to, have my similar philosophy that I had teaching, which is whatever your gift is, I'm going to help you highlight that gift, right? If you're a really quiet person, you may not be a great fit for our salon, but if you are, my kids that have autism that come in, the clients that, have special needs, that have sensory things, they need a calm person. No. You're going to be their person. So just finding the right personalities to come into our salon and then uplifting them and making sure that they feel empowered and valued and important and paying them well. All those things can apply to any franchise that you go into.
So a year from now, are you going to own 6 of these units or someday 60 of these units?
That's a fantastic question. I ask myself that every day. We have, contracted with the franchisor for a 4th, but it would be probably a build out. There's only one other Pigtails and Crewcuts in the state of Colorado, and I just don't feel comfortable going out of state. And they've only been operating for 2 years. So we'll see. There's definitely a lot of market and territory to be had in Colorado. There's a lot of great communities with lots of kids. So we'll see. Maybe 4 is the next step. Maybe 6. I don't know if I could do more than 6, but we'll see. We'll see.
So growing up, would you have ever said, or would a teacher have said to you, or a parent, or an aunt, or an uncle, someday, Deanne, you're going to be a big business owner, multi-unit of a brand that's working its way to be nationally known? What would you have said to that?
I would have probably said, yeah, I could do that. I joke that I can do that syndrome, where it's like, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. My mom was a teacher for 49 years. She just retired.
God bless her.
My, she is the saint walking this earth. But when I first graduated from Florida State with a theater degree, I worked on a cruise ship for a couple of years.
Great.
Throughout all of my different experiences, whether it's being, in high school, in college, my first career, in the theater world and on a cruise ship, I've always been thrust into leadership. Like, I think it's like you said, it's that DI personality, mostly D. That is like, you're the person who needs to be in charge. You're the person that needs to lead this boat. And then, even being in the classroom, I quickly transitioned to being a literacy coach and to working for the superintendent and all these different roles. So I don't think I would have been surprised. It would have been like, no. Yeah, I like to be in charge. They used to say bossy. Now I just say
that's not polite. Yeah, well, it's the franchising part that is surprising, because I would have never guessed it for myself, and no teacher would have ever. I was not a good student. I was a theater minor at Kent State University in Ohio. My major was journalism, and looked at going on a cruise ship for a career in theater for a period of time, but never did that. But never thought about franchising. I'm a DI personality as well. So franchising is a perfect fit for us if you find the right franchisor. You and your husband did. And congratulations. I'm sure you're going to continue to be successful. And you're one of the terrific success stories that we're proud to talk about in franchising.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I appreciate
you're
that.
welcome. Well, thank you for joining me on the podcast, Deanne. I appreciate it very much. You gave a lot of valuable information, and I look forward to hearing about your future success.
Well, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me on, and hopefully your listeners gained a few insights.
Thanks for tuning in to the Franchise Hot Seat Podcast with Dr. John P. Hayes. Tune in next time for more conversation around all things franchising.